divination. So I want to thank you guys for joining me today on my channel. Whether you are going to be joining the live stream or you're going to be watching this on playback, I want to thank you for participating. Um, so for those who may be new to my channel, my name is Alana. As I've said, I am a registered social worker here in Canada, and I am also neurodivergent and a Hayoka empath, and I love working with tarot, divination, spirituality, and of course, like I said, social work is my forte. So today I wanted to discuss a very, I would say, very important topic with all of you, and that is in regards to anger. And of course, knowing that anger is something that is a very sacred emotion, and it is one of those emotions that we sort of look to for protection or engage in for protection, and to demonstrate our sort of to hold on to power and to obviously whether or not we it becomes a defense against other things that aren't serving us. It's how we choose to use it and engage. So first off, one of the things that I would say that I wanted to say what sort of inspired this topic for me to talk about today is besides my own journey in healing, and sort of how sort of anger played a role in my own life and to date, but also what I've observed, what I have I've had to endure with others, and that sort of thing. So of course, how we all sort of display anger is going to vary from person to person. And one of the things that I have found very influential when it comes to how we express anger or how we express anger in our daily lives is, of course, trauma. The things that we have had to endure, and that when it comes to advocating for ourselves. So if you remember in previous videos, and I talk about, and I've spoken about what's the word, trauma responses, and how we sort of fall into these different categories throughout our lives. One of the things that I would say, of course, when it comes to the trauma responses, the ones that I feel like lead and really sort of lean on anger when it comes to that portrayal is, of course, the fight response. Now, not to say that anger can't come out in other trauma responses, but I feel like that's probably one of the most sort of leading responses out there is, of course, that fight response, right? I'm going to get you before they get me kind of thing, right? And so, but knowing that, our various emotions and especially anger is something that's supposed to be sacred and is meant for protection, how we wield it sort of determines whether or not how, are we then inflicting more unnecessary pain onto ourselves and others, or are we trying to alleviate that? So um, so of course, if you like my content, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And of course, I don't know how often or how long I plan to keep up, maybe doing lives, but we'll see how it goes. So, of course, talking about healthy anger, and, depending on what our upbringing looks like, you know, how we were shown what healthy anger looks like really all depends on what environment we were forced to grow up in, right? So, let's see here. Hold on. Give me a second here. So, what exactly is anger? And sort of by definition, what does our anger usually tell us? So one of the things that at least by definition what I looked up is that anger is a strong feeling of annoyance, displeasure, or hostility. It's an emotion that can often lead someone to engage in destructive behavior towards self or others. But it's also meant to be protective, remembering that, right? So the goal is to ultimately allow the energy to move through you in a way that is protective of your boundaries, but allows you to communicate your needs clearly and aids in restoring balance within you without being harmful to self or others. So, exactly what would healthy anger look like? Well, like I said, it would be protective, right? So, in order for it to be protective, it is not destructive. Give me 1 second. I can't even read my own handwriting. Sometimes, not all the time. Often, it is to alert you that something is wrong, unfair, unsafe. It is there to be a guard for your emotions and your energy, but it's not meant to be punishing to others. So the other idea is when we are sort of communicating our needs to others, we want to make sure, and especially when we're leading from the emotion of anger, is that it is meant to be clear and focused. So instead of it being a raging wildfire, like what we see going on in our world today, like, I sort of look at what's happening right now in our environment. That's Mother Nature who is raging and is angry because of the way we treat her, how we treat one another, because remember, we're also part of the earth as well, right? So to me, that's when I see, and as destructive and hurtful as a lot of these things that are going on, the floods, hurricanes, things that are happening out of season, things that are happening, even the wildfires going across, various regions. That's, to me, Mother Nature purging. That's her expressing her anger, her rage. Now, which can also be a symbolism for purification, right? But the idea, when we are embodying that emotion of anger, looking at how we're expressing it, and instead of raging out very uncontrollably, like a raging wildfire, for example, which essentially just burns everything in and of its path for no rhyme, no reason. Well, of course, in Mother Nature's case, it is for a reason, right? But in our case, when we go off, like I try to look at when we engage our anger, and we use that as a way to be forefronting into our communication and leading with that emotion, with the way we express ourselves. It's almost like giving someone a gun and them just willy-nilly just using it however, with no rhyme or reason, as I said, right? So it's learning how to control that, letting you controlling the anger rather than letting the anger be in control of you. So ideally, healthy anger sort of looks like thinking of a campfire, rather, that is contained, that is purposeful, and that is life-sustaining. So it's also something to recognize that it's also rooted in truth. It arises when your values, your needs, your dignity are violated. It carries valuable information about what matters to you. In action, naming it directly, saying exactly what it is that you feel and why. When it comes to channeling it into action, you're doing so by advocating for yourself. You are setting limits. You are speaking truth to matter. Now, when it comes to embodying awareness of that emotion for ourselves and one another, we are taking deep breaths. We are grounding ourselves in whatever form or fashion that looks like for you. Allowing the energy to move through your body so that the energy flows rather than remaining stagnant. It's also healthy anger in as I see it in this case, is also something that it's non-shaming. So using I statements instead of blaming when we're angry. So rather than saying you always, you're looking at starting with I statements. So the idea of I feel angry when da 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 da, rather than you always do this, so therefore it makes me angry. Because it's about recognizing and taking responsibility for your own emotions, as opposed to putting the blame onto someone else. Right? It's transforming energy. So using anger as fuel for change rather than using it for harm. So change looks like activism. It looks like creativity. It's being self-assertive. It's healing. So if we were to chart this out, let's say, and I've also pulled cards, tarot cards, that I'd like to sort of look through so we can, get a very picture view, if you will, of how anger can look like. But before I do that, wanting to let's look at charting out what unhealthy and healthy anger looks like. So, for example, unhealthy anger would be explosive and violent, or vengeful, rather than being expressed calmly and assertively. Unhealthy anger would be when we are also, it's not just about being explosive, but also suppressing it, because that's also not healthy. And I know for me, personally speaking, in my life, that was something that became the norm for me, was suppressing it. Now, suppression is a whole nother beast in and of itself, because what I've come to realize about suppressing anger is that you're taking it out on your own body. And that can often look like heart issues, high blood pressure, digestive issues. For me, it was digestive issues. Over time, the suppression puts a lot of dis-ease in the body. And I would say that's also where the term disease comes from. It's really understanding that the body is in it's unrest. It's in dis-ease. It's not in a state of rest or ease or flow of operationally functioning the way that it's supposed to. So when it's suppressed, it can turn inward, it can look as shame, it can look like guilt, and lead to illness, instead of being acknowledged, felt, and released. Unhealthy, when it's unhealthy, it's something that avoids responsibility. So, whereas healthy anger will take responsibility for expressing those needs. Unhealthy, when it's unhealthy, it seeks to dominate, rather than seeking to protect and restore balance. Before I go into the next part, I figured let's just take a look at some of the cards that I had pulled for this. So, in regards to some of the cards that I sort of pulled to look, that to me looks like unhealthy versions of anger. Well, one being the Seven of Swords. Now, the reason why I picked this card in particular is because to me, it's giving off that illusion of deception, right? This is a Seven of Swords, and it's here we have the person who is basically looks like they're trying to steal something, right? And that whole idea of, being dominating. We have also we have the Tower. So the Tower, to me, this sort of speaks to that idea when it's like embodied in the idea of Mother Nature, right? We have the a lightning strike, which sets this tower off on fire, and now these people are either being thrown out of the tower or having to bail because now it's on fire, right? To me, where a little bit more where maybe sort of healthy idea of anger looks like is here, I would say, with the Queen of Swords. So here we have someone who's very much in their power. They're sitting at their throne, and they're basically calling for you to step to them. But remembering that the sword itself, right, is sharp on both sides. So just as much as we may be stepping and displaying ourselves and putting ourselves out there to be assertive and to respect our boundaries, making sure we're being respectful as we're doing it, because that sword cuts both ways. Another sort of, for maybe the next two or few, I would say, where swords, here we have the Five of Swords. So winning at all costs. So that idea of, when we're displaying unhealthy anger, we are looking to dominate. We're looking to win. At the expense of someone else. And of course, sort of that idea of destructive anger, of course, the devil, right? Being that, holding that, and also remembering that even the emotion of anger, as sacred as it is, when we engage too much into that emotion, and especially when it's now paired with things like shame and guilt and jealousy and things like that, those are the lower vibrations that we, and the sort of the lower frequencies of being that can keep us stuck and can be very unproductive. Excuse me, and disruptive and destructive. So, learning how to harness that energy for protection, but not for domination. Here we have the Nine of Swords. So to me, the idea of what keeps us up at night, and again, sort of when that sort of suppression of anger, and we go into that suppression and it's holding us captive, It can often look like this. Even this. Even this. With the Ten of Swords. So to me now, the next two cards, well, here we have the Nine of Wands. So to me, this looks more of a more of a healthy display of anger, because we are here, we are making sure to have our boundaries put in place. Right? So we're protecting ourselves from the negativity that may be coming in to harm us. Now this one is a bit of a double sort of display here, because to me in this card, because this can look as strife, right? And when misused, it can look like, you know, societal chaos, if you will. But this can also be a healthy display, because it's also everyone sort of speaking their truth, their version of the truth, and standing firm in that conviction. So not that anyone is trying to overpower anyone, but everyone here is standing their ground. So the idea of healthy debates and whatnot, if you will. Now, this one, now although this is, you know, more of a representation of you know, even sadness, we can, even though we can't see this person's face, this person can be very upset and very angry at this without seeing that they're, so here, try to see which direction I'm pointing here. So here, you can be very angry about this, okay? And when we stay here in this negative emotion, we miss out on what's behind us there, what's still there to be grateful for. So one of the things that also that I realized that I had come to recognize about practices that to cultivate healthy anger and healthy displays of our emotions. One of the things that, and if you haven't seen my post that I did, I think yesterday, just in or even this morning in preparation for this live today, was the a friend by the name of Stephanie. She is the she runs the channel Strength Discovered, and she often puts out, or practically daily puts out, very somatic practices, ASMR, breathing, meditations, and she's had two, and of course I will be linking those videos that she's done down in the description box, if you haven't seen the post before. She has two so far that really address about, you know, feeling, letting the emotions sort of flow through you and releasing, you know, very somatically, you know, with sound, with tapping, with breathing. So somatic healing practices like meditation, like even, for example, I would say rage rooms. that's something that, and I know they exist all over, and it's something that I wanted to visit but haven't yet done. Um, and I feel that that can be very therapeutic. I know that a lot of people use running or some sort of physical activity, whether that be dance. For me, that would definitely be dance, to allow for those lower vibrational energies to move through us, so that we can feel them and release them. So even as I spoke about my friend Stephanie over at Strength Discovered, she has even another ASMR, very therapeutic sort of exercise that she has done, and that's sort of more geared toward feminine rage release. And trust me, I have taken part in some of her videos, and they are very, very helpful. I know that it has definitely been very helpful in releasing some of the stagnant energy that I've had within me at times, even to a point where I've released for me, one of my feelings that tends to sit on the surface, which isn't anger. That's one of the emotions that is more deep down for me. But it's the emotion of, well, the release of sadness. Afterwards, after being or taking part in some of her ASMR videos, I felt that release, where to the point where I'm crying it out. So yeah, even like I said, I think I even touched on this and briefly when I spoke about dance, another way of sort of to help sort of transmute anger in a healthy way. Creative expression. So anything where comes down to painting or gardening, or if that's your thing. Like for me, like I said, dance is definitely something for me. And drawing, whatever your creative practice is, as long as you're engaging in that. And of course, boundary work. So practicing saying no when necessary, and standing in your conviction, as when things don't align with you, where that is concerned. Also reflecting. Big thing about even me starting this channel, and I talk a lot about therapy, and even practicing tarot, and how the combination of the two for me has been so therapeutic and very, very helpful for me. But reflection. And so what are the things that even as I talk about this, and thinking about asking your anger directly, what is it trying to tell you? Having that relationship with yourself and with your emotions, to be able to talk to them directly and sort of commune that, because sometimes the feeling of anger can come up out of nowhere and we don't know why, right? So the only way to really know why is to really reflect on that, to be able to talk about that openly and honestly with some sort of trusted individual. So, and of course, as a social worker, I will always advocate in regards to therapy, seeking professional aid when it comes to that. And so the part that for me where that sort of leads me to is even just there's another wonderful reader, tarot reader, alchemist, high priestess that I love to watch, and reads all the time for the collective. And she might even be live this today at some point. And that her name is Destiny. She goes by Queen Cup on here on YouTube, and I will definitely have, especially the video that she released earlier this week, where this was one of the topics that she, in the reading, in the collective reading that she was discussing. And what I really liked about her live that day, more specifically, is how vulnerable and open that she is, even about discussing her own healing journey. And and she spoke a lot about she spoke about and openly admitted to her struggle with anger management, and that was something that has been something, as she has been on her healing journey, and even from when she first started, was something that was something that she had to work on, was in anger management. And even in, I would say, in my in the years that I've been alive, and I've interacted with other people and stuff like that, I've come across a lot of people who have anger issues. I would even say that there are members of my own family that have their own bouts where anger is concerned, where anger is something that sits on the surface, and that's what they lead with. But also, bearing in mind how destructive leading with anger all the time can be, right? And like I said, can lead us down the down the path of low frequency, low vibrations, right? That we put out. So wanting to take stock of that, and needing to do that for our own good, but also for the good of the collective, right? So I will definitely, like I said, I will have that video that Destiny did linked in the description box for you at the end of the end of this live, of course. But ultimately understanding that anger is sacred fuel. When expressed wisely, it helps you to reclaim your power, to honor your truth, and to aid in you moving forward authentically with, as you look to make authentic connections with self and with others. So, yeah, and, one of the things too that, where I find that even as we navigate our lives, anger has been given a very, it's gotten a bad rap, but it's gotten a bad rap because it is a double-edged sword. Excuse me. Depending on how we wield it, right? And oftentimes, we're led, especially for the divine feminine within us all, that sacred rage, that sacredness of that emotion has often been misused or abused, or even made to be stifled. I remember, for me, in my upbringing, like I said, I was never allowed to express anger. And, anger was seen as something that was truly negative. And, at least especially for females, like, that old saying that I I know that probably many people have heard, but that idea that little girls are seen and never heard, right? And that whole sort of understanding of that whole patriarchal system that has suppressed, us as females for a very, very long time. And that, and that idea that expressing anger is something horrible. Well, it isn't, but it can be when not done in a healthy manner. And also, what I found is when you have gone through a lot of trauma, when you have been forced to keep silent, when you have been, when your personal boundaries have been crossed for a long time, and especially if that's something that's also etched into your family DNA, your bloodline, that anger over time builds. And if we're not careful, can spill and overflow. And so, as I'm saying this, the things that are coming to mind that I'm thinking of is things like the movie, and of course, yes, because I'm very much into movies and television, and how the arts creatively can be so expressive, in teaching us. Depending on how you learn, like there are some people who are auditory learners. There are people who are those that have to read the information out, and then there are those that are visual learners. So they have to see it in practice, right? And then the doers, right? They learn by doing. And so when it comes to seeing it in view and sort of displayed in front of you, one of the movies that comes to mind is Diary of a Mad Black Woman. Now, of course, that's a Tyler Perry movie and stuff, and of course, but even how that whole idea of, even racially speaking, culturally speaking, there is a lot of us that even, in our heritage, where because culturally we have been made to be suppressed for such a long time, there's a lot of rage, there's a lot of emotions that build up and can be very explosive. However, when we don't take responsibility and account for how we doing it and allow the emotion to take control rather than the other way around, that's when it can become very destructive. And so it's very important for us to take account and take point and heed to that, because do we want to fall in which category do we want to fall into? Again, victim or perpetrator, right? And it's that idea of knowing that if we are to break the cycles that have come before us and have been stored and repeated for generations before us, and we're not taking that accountability to change the narrative where that is concerned, we will fall into those same traps. And knowing that anger is and can be especially when combined with other low dense emotions, and we are grounding that into our everyday, it becomes more destructive. We are lowering our vibrations. We are lowering the frequency of ourselves and one another. And the whole point to this, I feel, is to change those and evolve so that we can elevate ourselves and one another. So to me, of course, it's, it's all on what, we hope to achieve in this lifetime. To achieve, to be healthy, to be whole. Not every day is it going to be love and light, but aiming for a higher frequency, a higher point of view for love, for life, for all of us combined. So, of course, I want to, before, I sort of close out this live today, I wanted to pull some cards. Actually, okay, you know what? I'm going to pull from this same deck. This is the, ooh, I hate shuffling with rings on. All right, hold on a second. A minute here. Okay. Let's see what we have today for the collective. One card. We have the Two of Pentacles here, and this is the what flower? That's the amaranth, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. So we have the Two of Pentacles. Now, to me, this sort of represents that whole that fluctuation between, right? Because remembering, nobody is perfect, right? And so that the energy, the flow of all of our emotions, right? It's going to be a balance. It's about finding the harmony within, right? It's not always going to be love and light, but it also doesn't always have to be darkness and shadows. So it's finding the balance within ourselves, bringing harmony within each individual so that we are now reflecting that outward for each other, so that we're bringing harmony and balance back to ourselves, back to the collective, and ultimately back to Earth, back to Mother Nature, because everything right now is out of whack. And we, as the top of the food chain, supposedly, as human beings, right, with our free will, have to be able to take accountability for ourselves, our emotions, and how we display that on a regular basis outwardly to others. I'm also going to pull just on that Two of Pentacles. Let me just, actually, that's what I wanted to show you, which deck that I was using for that. And I did talk about this in a previous video if you haven't seen it. It is on my channel, the latest decks that I've been using. This is the Liber Florum Tarot. Now, this is a deck I don't think you can still get right now. This is an indie deck, and it definitely is something you'll probably have to find either on eBay or maybe even contacting the creator themselves directly. And of course, I'll have that linked in the description box for you. The creator is Cosmic Eye. So if you want to take a look at that. And I'm pulling from this affirmation deck, this Akil Pram. It's a Rockpool Publishing little affirmation deck. Of course, it opens, so like this. And this is one I've had for a while. And it's based off of the works of Frida, I believe so. But Akil Pratam is the, if I'm pronouncing that right, I hope I am, is the creator of this deck. Now, the cards look like this. Mine, out of many shuffling, has a big crease in the middle, but this is an amazing deck, and the messages that come out from this deck are absolutely wonderful. So, of course, if you like this video today, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Comment down below what you thought of it. And let's just, have a more open discussion on anger and the healthy displays of anger and how we, choose to do that moving forward. We've just had the new moon, which is actually Black Moon Lilith, as we ushering in the new season and Virgo season. I am a Virgo Sun and a Virgo Venus. Actually, my birthday is in 13 days from today. So yeah, and when I add up the numbers of my birthday, well, not my birthday, but my age, I would say, actually, I'm moving out from my 6th year, if you will, moving into my 7th. And the reason why I say that is because I'm adding up my age, and 6 in the major arcana, as we know, if you are into tarot, is the Lovers, and the Lovers card is the choice. Love is a choice, right? And then moving into the 7th, which is the Chariot card. And, that's all about, how we sort of proceed forward, and the Chariot being, if the Chariot card here, let me see if I find it for you before I pull that card. Hold on. Let's see if I find the Chariot here. Hold on, give me a second. The Chariot card is, it's represented by, you have the charioteer, and here we go, being carried by 2 Sphinx, one black, one white, and it's the idea of the balancing of light and shadow. So moving forward in a balanced and healthy way, merging the light and shadow aspects of self. So let's see, what do we need to let go of today for the collective using this deck? Affirmation. Oops. Okay. What's the message for the collective today? What do we need to let go of? Oh. Okay, well, actually, 2. So, here we go. Okay, so here we have, this is the card. And here, explore life and create your own experiences. Let go of being normal. Well, that's easy enough. If you remember my previous video, I talked about the fact that I am neurodivergent and what that looks like, right? So breaking out of societal norms. Shutting away what we were told how anger is supposed to be displayed, and embracing healthy practices of anger. But what does that look like to you exactly? Because we are all different. So rather than going with what society tells you, what does your heart tell you instead? Okay? Looking at raising the frequency of the collective. And the second one that came up is your glass is always refillable. Here's the back of the card. Flow like water instead of holding on to perceptions. So I really like those, especially with those two together, right? So again, that sort of goes back to what I was saying in regards to breaking the cycle of how, anger has been sort of displayed. What have your ancestors taught you about anger? And were the practices of the way that they held on to their anger, were they helpful or were they destructive? And whether or not you are planning to repeat those same cycles, or are you going to learn from their mistakes and start fresh and forge your own path? So I want to thank you all for joining me today for this live and to talk about healthy anger. To me, I would love to hear from you what you see as healthy displays of anger. Like I said, everything that I have shared, all of the other links, relevant links to this video, I will definitely have linked in the description box for you. So be sure to check that out. Like I said, Strength Discovered is a fabulous channel run by she's a beautiful human being, Stephanie from Strength Discovered. I will have her ASMR meditation practices for releasing anger and rage out in the description box for you. And of course, the reading by the beloved Destiny from Queen's Cup, I'll have that linked in the description box for you, as well as the decks that I used today. So with all that being said, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. As I always say, I am love and so are you. As I see myself as human, I know you are too. So with all that being said, please take everything that I said with a grain of salt. What serves you, let that serve you, and what isn't meant for you, leave it for somebody else who may need to hear it. And please remember to take care of yourself and one another. And while you're at it, please don't forget about me too. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Comment down below, as I said. And until we chat again, please always remember to check your privilege, mind your magic, and as always, live, listen, and learn. I love you so, so much. Bye, everybody.